Hello and welcome to another edition of It's About Money. I'm Nanette Nocon. Thank you for joining us. Today we have an exciting topic. Actually, it's a very interesting topic. We're going to talk about the barriers to abundance. And we have an exciting guest here with us today. It's Gwen Marton-Maza. She's the CEO of Spirit. She's a trainer, counselor, consultant, and coach. Yes, a very important role. And so Gwen, we're excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you.
And lots of topics to talk about. I'm not sure half an hour is going to be enough. But money is a very emotional topic. What are some of the barriers, emotional barriers that people face when dealing with money?
Well, it's interesting because the barriers that are created to money and or abundance happens in a two-stage process. It's a psychological process. Emotions is one part of that process. The emotion concept is the feelings that you have around money, but there's a second piece that affects it just as powerfully, and that would be the concept of intellect, the process of thought. So when you merge those two pieces in the emotions surrounding abundance or roadblocks or barriers, you bring the two of them together and it can be very dynamic in the ways in which you make choices and decisions.
Mm-hmm. So there's a feeling and then you intellectualize it and the two combined creates this psychological impact that makes you decide either way in terms of money.
Right.
So now what are some of the emotions that people associate with money? Now, usually, people think money and lottery, that kind of thing.
Well, then there would be joy. Typically joy, and ironically enough, fear can come up very quickly behind having maybe won the lottery or having a large sum of money. There are actually no good or bad emotions. Emotions simply are. So when we look at a list of emotions, I would suggest, and believe me, my list will be limited. It can be much more expansive. You can look at joy. Peace can come from having money. Grace can come from having money. There are also other feelings and emotions. There can be anger, jealousy. There might also be envy. There might also be pain, sadness, and depression. All of these emotions can be affected and be generated by the concept, just even the word money.
Mm-hmm. So it's been interesting to ask people what comes to mind when you think of money. Mm-hmm. So it could bring you up or bring you down depending on what the framework of that is all about. Now, other people talk about when there's money, they're either like you said, anger, but they're confused. They have some numbness. They just depends, I guess, on what they learn when they're younger. Is that right?
That would be correct. And how folks interpret the element of money usually happens as a result of what they learned growing up. And each individual is just that, they're individual. So each individual has their own set of information and reality. And it's affected by family systems. It's affected by school systems. It's affected by our religious beliefs. There are so many denominators that can play out here that in remembering that it all goes into the emotional impact and the thought that they have in relationship to the event that they're witnessing.
I see.
Combining it again.
I see. So you once referred to it as like emotional classroom. So where do people learn, where individuals learn these emotions?
That's right.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, actually, as a child, I always thought that people with a lot of money were very mean and cruel. Mm-hmm. So it was such a big thing for me to think about money as a good thing. I was afraid of it because it meant that, if you had a lot of money, you're mean, cruel, and just take advantage of people.
Or you will become that. So as we talked about, actually the title of the show today, the road or the barriers to abundance, to have those concepts about money, not only will it take away your ability maybe to make money, it would also take away your ability to expand who you are.
Sure, right. Actually, that's interesting. Let's talk about the abundance part of it, because there is money. You could have too little of it, and that's not so great. I mean, there's nothing holy about not having enough. I mean, and then the other piece is having an abundant life, not only on the financial end, but the feelings that come with the money part. Let's talk about the concept of abundance. What is that all about?
Abundance is a magnificent word. I really like that word because the word actually means to have more than enough of, to be able to be full and have your needs and whatever needs to come your way not only be enough for you, but you also will have some to share. And abundance is not only related to money, as you and I have talked about. Abundance is more, and our culture tends to associate it with money, but it really is much more than that. And we are moving as a people to have a better understanding, a more expanded understanding of abundance. You can have an abundance of friends. You can have an abundance of health. So your health means you're not only well, but you're so well that you can share your health with others and be of service to them in different ways. You can have an abundance of the way in which you feel your workplace is, and that energy just exudes, so you can invite others to not only come to work with you because you have the ability to create so much, but they can also be part of that type of way of living. So abundance is really a mindset and a way of living too.
And money is one of the subsets of feeling abundant.
Yes, yes. And in our culture, though, we tend to put money as an issue of not just abundance, but one that is also coupled with its opposite, which is scarcity.
Yeah, and scarcity happens because of what happens to people, right, or what they think about.
We can actually create it.
Oh, tell me more.
We can create scarcity through the process of that mind and emotion. And we can also create it, and we also promote it in our culture through TV, the media, the radio, all of those kinds of things. We can if we choose to do that, and we do in our culture. And we also create it with the messages that we receive as we're growing up. And when you know that you're being invited to embrace scarcity is when it is generated and it's based in the emotion of fear. So if I say to you, Nanette, and I can do it to myself, oh, gee, Nanette, I like your outfit, but I could never afford it, or I could never have that. I'm giving myself, the emotion is sadness, see that, and loss, and then the message is I can't afford, or I cannot get myself to that position. So I've created something in my mind that may not actually even be real.
I see. So you're creating a limiting thought. So although you appreciate somebody else looking well or having something that you'd like, you create this immediate barrier to having a similar type of thing in your life.
And then others also create scarcity for us. And they do that in the way in which they interact with us. Someone may think less than someone else simply because, simple example, they drive a different car. So they run with the false sense of superiority that they're somehow better than because they drive car X and you drive car Y. And when you look at and you bodily communicate information to people, you actually let them know messages, more so not through your words, but actually through your actions.
That's interesting. Yeah, you're right, because it's, we hear part of the message, but there's the action, the emotions, the facial, response, and all that. So interesting. So the opposite of abundance is scarcity, and we either do that to ourselves or we allow others to do it.
Correct.
In the way they interact with us. Now let's talk a little bit more about abundance and the way of how we use money. The patterns of money with abundance. What are some of the patterns that we go through that may create abundance or scarcity? So for example, abundance in my business as a financial planner means saving and investing. And scarcity would mean spending, I suppose.
Spending, and probably with a sense that some of that could be more like the process that happens with us in the culture. We spend because we need to have, and if we don't have that pattern, then we aren't enough. We aren't good enough, we're not enough, not only just to live in a neighborhood, we may not feel like we're enough for a relationship. So unless I wear the perfect clothes or I have the right hairdo, I'm not going to be enough for the relationship. So then again, you create scarcity.
I see.
The abundance piece is different. It's about knowing yourself. It's about knowing when you have enough so that you're filled. And when you're filled, then it doesn't matter what someone else has or doesn't have. You know that you have enough, not only for to take care of yourself responsibly and to care for your family or what have you, but it also means that you have enough to give away too. So you may be you may give away money, or you may give away your time, or you may be giving away your service.
Talent, sure.
Talent,
okay.
Correct.
I see. So it's interesting because when I talk to clients about money and having an inability, a so-called inability to curtail their expenses or manage their expenses in a manner that allows them to save, many times, I look at a client and say, are you sure there's no room here to cut back on some things? And it's probably a matter of just using the right words to encourage an individual to reframe the way they're thinking about the way they're spending their money, instead of saying, well, maybe we should limit the way you spend money on clothing. We should perhaps look at, well, let's take a look at your closet and see what kind of wealth exists there in terms of clothing.
I like the word wealth, exactly.
Yeah.
So having them, so you were talking about reframing a statement, and a simple statement reframe for that would be, what do you already have enough of? What do you feel comfortable with? So what we do is we help individuals set up their own limit in what they need, and then they can say, I don't need more clothes, or I don't need to buy a new car. This one is just fine. But if I'm in the pattern of buying a new car every 2 years, because that's the way it's supposed to be, or I learned somewhere that that's the way you need to do it, I can challenge that thought. And then I can also challenge the emotion that goes with that thought of, oh my goodness, if I don't do this, my car won't function. And cars are a great idea because frankly, they really run for 100,000 miles or plus these days as long as you maintain them. So if you maintain them, they have that longevity. But in here you have to decide, and in here you have to decide the level of longevity.
Sure, because I do encounter people say, I need to change my car, I have 40,000 miles on it, and I have clients say, oh, it'll run some more, I only have 125,000 miles.
Do you see the different
yes,
mindsets?
Absolutely.
And the different comfort levels.
Sure.
And the one was going, I need to change,
right,
which tells me it's almost fear-based, and the other one is more of faith in the process. I've got 100,000, it can even last more.
Right, yeah, a lot of it is fear that may or may not be justified depending on the feeling of scarcity or abundance that people have. So I think it's important to recognize the behavior, if it's an abundant behavior or a scarcity mentality.
Yeah, beautiful, I would agree.
Yeah. Now, what about entitlement and earn? I'm one who really don't like entitlements because it, I think, demotivates people and all that. What are the psychological barriers that are created by entitlements?
That is an incredible concept of one we could probably spend hours just having conversations on. Entitlement really is a feeling inside. Sometimes it is learned by having it passed down generationally. In other places it is based on history that if one got it, I'm entitled to it too. And some of the barriers that come with that concept and some emotions that come with that concept are people aren't able to expand themselves. They can't empower themselves. When we live in a world of entitlement, we actually take away our own power. So we take away our power to earn. We take away our power to be. We take away our power to have more friends, to have more health. Because I'm entitled to it means that I'm expecting someone to give it to me. And then we don't get that good feeling of being able to create some things for ourselves.
One of the statements that ever shocked me, as you know, I'm an immigrant from the Philippines, and there's certain phrases that I'm not used to. And when I first moved here, somebody said to me, I had that coming to me. And I thought, what does that mean? You had it coming to you, like you deserve it. You deserve to have that money. It's like, what makes that happen? So it's kind of a shocking statement. I don't hear it that often in those words, but it is a little bit of a surprise when you're not used to that kind of behavioral pattern.
You may not hear it so much. Culturally, I think we see it quite often. Because I'm in the 7th grade or the 8th grade, I'm entitled to these pants. Okay, do you see how that comes along?
Sure.
And I'm entitled to it because I saw it happen on TV. And one of the things I find interesting, because I have a 12-year-old daughter, and she watches TV and those kinds of things very naturally like others, but there was this one show that she caught where young girls were having 16th birthday parties, extravagant birthday parties. And so you could watch her little brain take all of this in and decide that, well, I ought to have something along this line, until we really sat down and unwrapped the tape that had gotten wrapped around this lovely mind of hers to help her understand that this is one way of living. There are other ways. What is it you really want to have at a party, and how do we help you achieve that goal without it being what somebody else decides the party ought to look like?
I see what you mean. So it's kind of like being in that position because you're in that stage of life, and therefore it should be coming to you.
So that's one way entitlement gets created.
Yeah. Right.
We also, as parents, create entitlement through the messages we give to our children.
Now tell me about that.
Well, if we continuously just give to our children with no way of earning such privileges or such treats, and if we give more than abundantly, if we give in terms of collection, say, a collection as opposed to what is really needed, children don't know and they don't have the capacity to decipher like we do. We think they ought to be able to, but they don't, because remember, children's brains aren't fully completed in their maturation until they're about 20, 21 years old.
I see. Yeah.
So they're learning these tapes from us, and they're taking cues from us. They may look big, they may look like young people in a lot of ways, but their brains are still developing. And what we share with them and what they witness from us as their parents or as their teachers or as their ministers and priests or as someone even in the grocery store, they're logging in as data and information.
I see. Processing that to formulate their own behavioral patterns.
And
later.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. No, that's and now if someone had an idea that if someone is a parent just trying to give something to children all the time, they ought to kind of like stop and think about that, right? Because it's building these emotional patterns for the children that as adults might hurt them in the long run.
That's correct. As well as I would encourage the parent to really take a peek as why they are giving this to the children. What is happening to them? What emotional fulfillment, what concept, what intellectual thought is happening to them that creates a pattern for them that they continue to give and give and give? What's the message?
One of the patterns I've seen often is when couples first have children, sometimes people have the option of having one of the parents stay at home to take care of the child, and then all of a sudden money becomes an issue, and then both parents are back to work. But what I find is sometimes it is difficult to manage financially when both parents are working and they're too busy taking a look at their lives. They end up buying and spending for the child so much that they don't think about it and say, well, this is a reward, or this is something precious that we're giving you, financially precious or whatever. It's like, well, we're too busy. You can't go to your show tonight or your play tonight. I'm just going to give you this gift. Oh, we'll go on vacation because we're so tired. We'll just keep going out to eat because we have no time. So although there's more income flow into the household, the outgo is so much more.
That's
because
correct.
everybody's so tired, or this sense of guilt of not being there to give emotional support to the children. They end up giving money.
So they turn in one set of abundance they trade in one set of abundance for another. So the income may be coming in, but it really isn't abundance because, as you said, it flows out at a higher level. That's a perfect example of how we as consumers buy from emotional levels. So we buy things we really don't need. We buy things that we don't need and continue to, as I said earlier, collect and collect. And we become more focused on, oh my gosh, I have to get more. But then we also become very overwhelmed with how much stuff we have, how much we've accumulated, and how much we really don't need.
When I work with clients who have such difficulty managing their finances, and it happens more so with women, with single women more, I find that I ask them to have this $100 test, that if they're buying something and it's worth more than $100, that they ought to walk away from it and come back the next day if they really want it. Because if they really don't want it or need it or have the desire for it, they probably won't go back to the store and get it. But they should drive home, think about it, and then come back if they really want it, then they should get it. But then if it goes away, then it wasn't worth buying.
Yes.
So either just kind of sleep on it and then take a look at it again later and kind of lessen the amount of stuff that's accumulated that might not be needed.
Do they implement it too, and how successful does it work for them?
Actually, I found that if you work with a person on a regular basis, it's a little bit tougher for me because it's really a lot of investment of my time. But often I find women need some help, or people need help, but mostly women, because I love to shop, so if I have the time to shop all the time, I would spend money, but if I don't have the time, I won't. But at any rate, I find that if I could help them, then they manage better. I think sometimes it gets to a point where it's so bad, you don't want to invest any energy or time into it to make it better. How bad can it get? Just keep doing it. So unless somebody gives you a hand to lift you out of the cycle that you're in, you just keep doing it. And I want to help people when I can, but I work on a financial level as opposed to the emotional side that you're talking about. So let's talk about some of the myths about money.
The greatest one is that there's never going to be enough. because that is the number one that goes right into scarcity. And again, if we can begin to examine how we use our money, where we put our money, what the purpose of money is, money is simply energy, and it transforms in and out of our life. If we look at it as a conduit as opposed to something to keep and hoard, okay, it changes the way in which you use your money. You can live very well on actually quite a little bit of money, and you can live very poorly on quite a lot of money.
Sure, and that's well put. That's actually well put, because a lot of people often say, "Remember when we were like in our 20s and we barely had anything, but a great life we had."
Yes.
So people can really learn to work with the resources that they have, as opposed to just like feeling that there's never enough. You know, one of the things that you said made me think about the common myth about money, and that's money is the root of all evil.
Yes.
And that's so sad, because it's really the love of money is the root of all evil.
That's where that happens. And again, money is simply a conduit. It is an opportunity to open doors for you and offer opportunities and choices. It also, I think the painful piece to it is the root of it, and the love of it is what gets us feeling kind of crazy and overwhelmed, and like there will never be enough. I'll never be able to compare or have as much as, you know, Mr. Smith next door. And that myth actually creates comparison. So instead of people being able to have collaborative or to share with one another, which, as you and I both know, if we pool what we have and we share, we're really going to be able to do many, many things. We choose to become separate and segregated and all about me, very self-centered, as opposed to self-centering.
Well, that's can you help me out with the difference between that being self-centered and self-centering?
Self-centered is based in fear, and based that I have to take care of me, no one else can have anything that I have, or I have to keep it for me and I can't share. And self-centering is being comfortable in yourself, knowing that you have enough, that you are enough, that you are capable enough. And because of that, you also are free to give. They're very different ways to live. And I think that we treat and we teach folks to be competitive, which means I have to win, instead of being collaborative, which is win-win. Competitive is win-lose, collaborative is win-win.
Got it. So if I win, you have to lose, and that's the competitive nature, and collaborative is we can both win.
We both win.
Yeah, right.
We both win.
Yeah, it's a great approach, actually, a great framework when you say, well, let's both win on this together, instead of, you know, you have to lose for me to win. That's kind of a very angry type of feeling. It's not comfortable in the long run.
It bases itself again in that fear-anger root.
Yeah. Now, one of the things we talked about, you know, some of the emotions, some of the barriers. Now, help me out with some things, some steps that people can take to move beyond the roadblocks.
Actually, there's some really peaceful and easy steps you can use. And the first and foremost is I would encourage people to just get quiet and take a moment and explore what the feelings are that they're having inside. Find out what they're feeling. Because when you can see where you're stuck, first I'd actually have them get aware of where they're stuck. Do that intellectual piece first. Find out where you're stuck. And then pay attention to the emotion that's connected to the stuck point. After you've done that, then you can begin to examine those myths and those messages that we have in our minds.
So, okay, so it was, if, you know, I did this one time, long time ago, 25 years ago. Somebody told me, well, hold the money, the dollar bill in your hand, and just hold it and close your eyes. And just think about what you're feeling. You know, what is money meaning? What does it mean to you? So just being quiet, like you said, it does make a world of difference. So understand your base.
Understand your base. And so that is part of it. If you know that you're frustrated and you're looking at the roadblocks, what you really can do, again, as I said, look at where you're stuck. Look at the feeling associated, okay? And then you can also examine the myth. And in that time, as you were looking about holding the money, you had a very pleasant look on your face. So there didn't seem to be a whole lot of stuckness there, but it looked like more pleasure. Then we get to look and examine the truth. We get to find out the truth about what's really the situation that we're in, the information. And remember, information is simply information. It's not emotionally connected. It's simply information. It's facts. We can then follow up with knowing what your guiding principles are, which is the piece we're talking about, values. The values that are important to you. Your value of money, but there are more than more than values just to money. There's values about family and systems and how you want to live your life and how you want to have a relationship with your friends as well as your partner. So look at examining your values and then see how money affects that. When you move through that, you can then move to the piece of the goals that you have for yourself. What goals do you have with regard to where money would be the conduit? Okay? Set them and know them. And then finally, it's really important to remember that you have to have a desire to really have a change in whatever the barrier is. Otherwise, you're just going to stay right where you are. You're going to stay with what you know well. It's more challenging, and that desire is the energy that helps you move past the known pattern, break the pattern, and then you get to have a different way of looking at the money, the abundance, the time with family, the time with friends, the way in which you work, your health, all the areas in your life.
So good to contemplate, think about the emotions associated with money, look at the information that relates to that emotion that comes in, and then the next step is to look at, is it goals? Not yet.
You look at your own value system. You can look at your value system. Then you have to have an idea of your goals. As long as you have all of the pieces somewhere along the line, you can set up your own format. That's the format that works well for me. Each individual has to find out what works best for them.
Sure. Now, as a trainer and consultant, that's part of the work you do, a lot of what you do, right?
Help people clarify, understand where they're stuck, understand where they're excelling well, and help them mostly get a balance.
And many times many people are beginning to work with financial advisors.
Yes.
So what questions should they be asking their financial advisor?
How they see money and where they get stuck.
Okay.
So that if the financial planner knows his or her own limitations as well as his or her own strengths, they know that they can help guide them through.
Sure.
They have the skills that they can guide them through their difficulties or their impasses.
That's great. And if somebody really has a barrier, it would be good for a professional advice from an advisor to a coach like yourself to help through it, because sometimes it's a lot deeper than that. Being a financial advisor, I tend to focus on the information side that you were talking about earlier, and then helping clients to look at the goals. But it's hard to really get deep into the feelings about money and the value system that go with it. So the two can be complementary to help the clients achieve abundance in their lives.
That's true.
So
you can help through either working directly with the coach or consultant or whoever as either the financial planner having conversations. I'm working with some clients, can you help me guide them? Or you can actually have the coach work with your clients directly and do some layer peeling of doing the myths, depending on your time frame and how you'd like to collaborate as a team.
Sure. It's because the abundance and scarcity is really in our minds, as opposed to something that is your place in life since you were born. It's there's a part of faith, but yeah, you have to make your own path into having abundance. And in our culture, we talk about it in terms of money, because money is not really an end. It's more of the means that is necessary to meet our goals and objectives and values in life. So it's been such a pleasure talking with you today. We talked about a lot of things, and
nice.
I asked you questions here and there, but but I think we were able to have a great discussion to share with our audience today.
Thank you.
About the meaning of the abundance, the concept of abundance, and barriers that they might be thinking about, and ways to overcome that. So you'll have to join me again sometime in the future.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation. It was very lovely.
And thank you, our audience, for joining us today. Our guest is Gwen Marton-Maza, CEO of Inspirit, who is a consultant, a coach, a counselor, and a trainer. And if you have any questions or comments, please email me at nnocon@aol.com. And thank you again, Gwen Marton-Maza, for joining us today. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, please email Nanette at nnocon@aol.com. Following production was produced through Penfield Community Television in Penfield, New York.